The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, legal, or other professional advice. All opinions expressed by the host or guest are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of QP Consulting LLC or its affiliates. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. Listeners should consult their financial advisor or other professionals before making any investment decisions. QP Consulting LLC is a registered investment advisor. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. For more information, including our disclosures and Form ADV, please visit qp-consulting.com. Welcome to The Jagged Path with Mark Ivsevich, where we talk about people, careers, the U.S. retirement system, and the many indirect ways people move through their working years towards retirement. Today on the show, we have Connecticut native Chris Cillizza. Chris has worked at numerous places as a reporter, editor, writer, and new media jack of all trades. You will recognize him from his time on the Tony Kornheiser Show or appearances on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, or Meet the Press. Welcome to the show, Chris.
I'm thrilled to be here. No one introduces me as a Connecticut native. My mom will be happy.
Well, good. Well, we might have a couple other pieces of Connecticut trivia that come up. So as a condition of getting you on the show, I promised we'd talk a little bit about a passion that both of us, I think, have, which is Hoya hoops.
Yeah, it's a passion. It's a passion that I've unfortunately also passed along to my two sons, which I feel bad about because they're like, why couldn't you root for Duke? I'm like, I know. Trust me, I wish.
How old are the boys currently?
17 and 13. So junior in high school and eighth grader.
Okay, and I'm similar in that my son has said, Dad, I don't ever really recall Georgetown winning.
Yeah, no.
And I think of this in their memory in their lifetime. He's been to some great games, but he was like 5.
Yeah, no, we have not been good in a very long time. But we can save that till the end.
Yeah, we'll say, well,
niche topic.
It is. But here's my question. So I've seen you on Pardon the Interruption, I believe, back in the day. So I'm expecting some insights here. What is your assessment of the current state of the team on the Hilltop?
So for what we pay Ed Cooley, which is like $6.5 million a year, which puts him certainly in the top 20 of highest paid coaches and maybe in the top 10, though I know a lot of deals are getting redone. And what I am told our NIL budget is, which is north of $5 million without a serious football team to take any of that money, we should be better. That's just the reality. It looked like year 2, which was last year, was a step in the right direction. Year 3 this year is a step backward. My view, I don't know how you feel about this, but my view is if Cooley, who I do think is like genuinely charismatic, a good recruiter, understands the modern basketball environment and is willing to play within it, if he can't succeed, we may be, I was going to say a mid-major, but we may be even beneath the mid-major because, a lot of these mid-major teams are, quite good. That worries me. I continue to believe the only thing I continue to hold out hope for is there is absolutely no reason that Villanova remains a relatively big national powerhouse. Obviously, they won national championship under Jay Wright. And Georgetown couldn't, right? If the system can produce a Villanova that's good, it should be able to produce in this modern era a Georgetown that's good. Is Cooley Jay Wright? Probably not. But it's a similarly sized school with a similarly sized and maybe even less affluent alumni base. So it seems to in a city that is less known for basketball than DC is. So it's like, I hold out hope. I can't believe I'm saying this, that we become Villanova, but I do think that is sort of the model that it can be done. But I don't know. At some point we finished dead last in the Big East this year. I don't know what other conclusion that you can draw other than it's a failure.
There's nowhere to go but up, but I do like your optimism. The bigger kind of question in my mind is when do kind of athletic department and donor resources dry up and wither on the vine?
Yep.
And do people say, Georgetown doesn't need more applicants. We have plenty of applicants and always will.
Yep.
And that becomes kind of the bigger question, I think, is do we just kind of look at it and are like, well, we will continue to participate at a high level with maybe a so-so support. but boy, I don't want to start off on such a
I
depressing
know, man.
topic.
What a downer.
So we'll okay. I want to get here. Here's a big one before we go into money matters. So
Sure.
we were both at Georgetown at the same time, and you were a year younger than me, I believe. You
Yep.
were class of '98.
That's
Okay.
right.
So I spent considerable time at Yates Fieldhouse playing pickup hoops, as I believe you did as well.
I did.
Yates has an unwritten cast system, if you will, whereby players self-select what court they're going to play on. Court 1 is the best court. Court 2 and 3 are slightly less good. Chris, how do you grade your game? And which court do you frequent the most? Did you frequent the most during your college years?
Or 1.5. I was okay as a basketball player. It was, which it was my best sport, but I was never great. I was good in my hometown of 5,000 people, but then as soon as I went beyond 5,000 people, I wasn't as good. Court 3 is dog food. I would not play over there, but I would say 1, I would be fine. 2, I would do well. So somewhere in between those, I still play relatively frequently when my kid's schedule allows it. But what I found is like, you do, it's funny, until I was like 40, I'm 50 now, until I was 42, 43, I didn't really feel much different. I mean, I'm sure I was not as good as I was when I was 21, but like, I didn't feel all that different. I definitely feel different now in that, like, I'm a little bit slower, and I was never fast. I'm a little bit slower, and I don't. The most important thing is I just don't recover quickly. Like that, I'm sore. It takes longer for me to warm up. It takes longer for me to cool down. So it's like playing golf. It's like a 6-hour time commitment for me to play pickup basketball these days. But it is still like a huge joy in my life, and I tell anyone who asks me this, if you said you can do anything for an hour, but at the end of the hour I need an assessment of this person who you've never met before, I would say give me an hour and let me play pickup basketball with them. Like I think it is tremendously revealing of character, both for good and bad. And so,
that's a good observation.
I'd much rather do that than sit down and have coffee with them, or like, put them through some sort of like test of like how many windows are there in New York City? Like that kind of thing. Like I would like to play basketball with them, because I really do pick up. I really do think is, what kind of fouls do you call? What kind of teammate are you? Do you play defense? Do you do you just cherry pick? Like there's so much, I think, in it that reveals character.
Yeah, are you a Costanza level chucker? I mean,
exactly.
The funny thing is that I'm still playing too. I hit a point where I thought I was going to have to stop, but some physical therapy helped. But my friend and I were kind of the older 50-year-olds and playing with a lot of younger 30-year-olds.
Oh, yeah.
And our point was, the one thing we don't like is when you do take a hard fall, how quickly some of those guys go to help you up.
Totally.
Like it's like they're worried about you truly
Don't let
being
the old
hurt.
man die.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. All right, well, let's dig into the money stuff. So I did a quick search on things not to talk about at a cocktail party, and the top 3 are politics, your world, money, my world, and religion.
Yep.
So you and I work in 2 of those areas, and the one way I think people learn about taboo subjects is to put other experiences out there and see how people kind of understand from one another. So here are the questions. Tell us a little bit about your background, family, siblings, parents. What did they do, and how did you learn about the topic of money?
Let's see, I grew up in Connecticut, as you noted. I'm an only child. My dad was a public school teacher. My mom worked, like almost everybody, I feel like, who grew up anywhere in and around Hartford, Connecticut. My mom worked in the insurance industry.
Okay.
I went to an all-boys Catholic school for 2 years, my freshman and sophomore year. At which point I realized I was probably not going to play Division I basketball. They were a very good basketball school. I transferred to a prep school for the final 2 years, where I played a little bit more, and it was a little bit more my level. That was until 94, and then I graduated, went to Georgetown, and have been in DC ever since. It's funny. I spent, let's see, so I graduated from college in 98, and I started working for this place called the Cook Political Report in DC, which is no longer owned by Charlie Cook, who it's named after, but, a political handicapping service. Basically, they're the people who tell you, like, oh, the Virginia governor's race leans Republican or leans Democrat. That's them. And lots of media types pay for that. And through that, I was like, you know what? I really want to go into journalism, even though I hadn't done anything in journalism at Georgetown. I went from there to Roll Call newspaper, which was it still exists, a very Hill centric publication. From there to the Washington Post. I spent 10 years at the Washington Post, actually longer, 11 years. I left there to go to CNN. And then this is to answer your question, when did I first realize and start to think about money? Right, I can almost date it exactly. It was the week after Thanksgiving 2022. I got an email. I was at CNN.
Okay.
I got an email from Sam Feist, who was the bureau chief at the time, and a woman whose name I never had heard before. And I Googled her, and she was the head of HR at CNN. I emailed my agent, and I was like, "What does this mean?" And he was like, "Well, you're getting laid off." And so I went in, got laid off. At which point, I had a contract, so I still was making some money, but I had to figure out something else to do. And it was literally at that point that I started to realize how little I knew about money, how little I knew about business. Journalism obviously is a business, but it made enough money for long enough that in the years I was there that you didn't ever really worry about it, or I didn't ever worry about it. But when I got laid off, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? We started an LLC, my wife and I, as a content business. I started writing a newsletter on Substack. I started a YouTube channel. I started looking for, other ways to make money. And it literally, so the last 3 years have been a crash course in money and small business. Which I literally knew nothing. I'm not exaggerating. I was an English major at Georgetown. Like, I knew nothing about any of that stuff. To my own
That's kind of
detriment.
why I wanted you on the show, though, I think, is that, people think that, okay, college educated, prestigious university, um, you know, people from Connecticut, you
Oh
always
yeah,
think Wall Street, people from Connecticut, but
affluent Connecticut people.
affluent, exactly. But at the end of the day, I think people, how they learn about money is through experiences and things like that. And the other reason I wanted you on the show was I'm fascinated by the industry you're in and how rapidly it's changing and evolving. And so, with not the political landscape, but the media
Yeah.
landscape, how do you cobble together a career, and how many money sources do you have right now? So, it's from
Yeah.
2022 on, like, is money coming from 7, 8 different small
Yes.
sources?
It's such a great question, because it's the first thing that I tell people. One thing that's happened obviously is mainstream legacy media. So all the big name companies you can think of, obviously the Washington Post is the leading edge of this, but they've all cut tons of people, right? I mean,
Right.
I was at the start of those cuts, but they continue to happen. The Associated Press announced in the last couple of weeks they're going to cut 5% of their staff. It's just going to keep happening. So one of the things I tell anyone who asks is, look, I had one big revenue source, CNN or the Washington Post, which was great. But when that revenue source went away, I didn't have anything else. So the way that I now think of it, and this is not unique, but it's the way the way I had to think about it was, if I put myself and like the content I can create and how I can monetize that content as the hub, this how many spokes, like a bike, how many spokes can I build off of that hub that I can make money off of? Some a lot of money, some a little bit of money, so that if one of the spokes break, the bike doesn't collapse like it did when I got laid off from CNN. And so I tell everybody that, like, you are almost certainly not going to, in journalism, not going to make the same amount of money that those legacy media companies paid you from one source. I don't make what CNN paid me from Substack. I don't make it from YouTube. I don't make it. I have a show called Politics Aside with Chris Cillizza on Monumental Sports Network, the regional sports network here in the DC area. I don't know. I do some paid speaking. No one of those places pays me what CNN paid me. But if you add up, I think my wife handles still handles our business stuff, because I'm still a learning. She's an English major too, but I'm still learning on the business side. I think in 2025, I had 15 different sources of income. Now, not all of those are, significant. Some of them are one-offs, but I would say it fluctuates between about 6 and 9 spokes off of that
Okay.
hub, which means you have a lot of bosses, or at least you're juggling a lot. I'm not sure I have a lot of bosses, but you're juggling a lot. You're spinning a lot of plates. Pick your metaphor. Um, but it also means that for me, it's a little less stressful in that it's not, if this one spoke breaks, I got nothing. It's like, okay, if that spoke breaks, okay, where else could I try to like make a little bit more money in these other 5 or 6? And that to me is the model. And I don't know anything about the world outside of journalism, but that is the model going forward for journalists. It's just mainstream legacy places are either going to lay you off or pay you less and less and less. So if you want to go independent like I have, you have to figure out ways to make money from a variety of sources.
And I think that's probably true of a half a dozen or more industries. And probably as we go into the future, more and more people are going to have a career path that looks like yours, or even like mine to a lesser extent, where, same idea, it's the clients you acquire, how you monetize different things and kind of move from there, and
Yep.
you learn it as you go a little bit. The production company, is it Cheney Road
Cheney
Productions?
Road Productions. It's just the street I grew up in Connecticut.
And do you guys have any employees, or is it just the two of you?
Nope, just the two of us. I have
Okay.
purposely kept it very lean. AI helps with that. Like I
Right.
don't know how to make thumbnails for YouTube and that sort of thing, but AI does a decent and improving job. The expenses we have are like I pay for Riverside, which is a way that you can record, a
Right.
bunch of content. It's not very expensive. I pay for ChatGPT's monthly pro plan, but I mean, I would say this is, I bought a computer. I bought a microphone. I bought some lighting, because I'm doing so much stuff either on TV or video. Uh, but I would say total all in expenses to start this, given that I bought a MacBook, which was like $2,000, is probably $3,000. Do you know what I mean? Like the
Right.
overhead is super low. This is, I work out of my home office. I mean, that's one way. I've really tried to stay super lean, because I think one of the problems with whether you're in legacy media or independent media, the biggest problem is you grow, and then it's like, okay, well, now I have a bunch of employees, now I have overhead, now I've got to do healthcare, and I didn't want to get into all that because I needed to, like, my kids are in private school. We had a house, we have a mortgage. Like, I needed to make a decent chunk of money. So I was like, I need to solve for keeping as much as possible and then worry about, okay, what does growth look like beyond, after a couple of years, which is kind of where I am now.
Yeah, you're in those big spending years. And the other reason I kind of asked was, so the one thing this toggles over some policy stuff is what you're seeing is, because a lot of small companies aren't offering retirement plans.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia and Maryland, you're in Virginia, I'm in Maryland, have different state-based auto IRA plans. They have different requirements. If you have 25 or more employees in Virginia, you have to offer one of these plans. In Maryland, it's 2 employees. And so there are some things coverage wise that are happening in terms of retirement. But so your wife had worked at Catholic. Do the
Yep.
two of you have a solo 401k plan or an IRA you fund, or are there too many expenses now and retirement is deferred? Like how are you saving and planning for retirement today?
We have a financial planner who handles most of it. We have 529s for the kids.
Okay.
We have the 401ks that she had from Catholic and that I had from the Washington Post and then CNN. We set aside some chunk every year to put into all of that. It's mostly determined by our financial advisor. We every year are I mean, one thing that's hard for me that's newish is that when you work for yourself, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm making all this money. This is amazing. And then you're like, well, all of this money is non-tax money. Like the accountant comes to you at the end of the year and he's like, hey, I need you to write like a pretty decent 6-figure check. And you're like, wait, what? Like, because it's not your Medicare and Social Security is not being deducted out and all that. So, I am an only child. My mom helps us on it, will help us on the education front, at least somewhat, for the 2 kids. So that's a little bit of a load off. I've got in the first year after I got laid off, I think there was definitely hey, we may need to stop funding these retirement things. We may need to pull back just because we needed more liquid cash. But it's grown enough that we're in a pretty good place there. I mean, who the hell knows? But I think we're in a pretty good place. But for me, one thing that is very challenging, it's both good and bad, but one thing that I struggle with, just because I'm like a nervous person, is the uncertainty of working for yourself. Is that you don't make I don't make a salary. It's kind of like, okay, we did pretty well in 2025, and I would assume 2026, the way in politics, the way it works is the more people care. 2026 is an election year. It's not a presidential election year, but it's an election year, so in theory more people will care. I feel pretty good about where we're going to go, but you don't have like a set number that you're going to get to. So that makes planning a little bit harder. And then you add in, my son is being recruited for soccer, my older son, and we're like flying all over the place for all that. Like it's, these like weird expenses that you don't build in. So I feel pretty good. But again, I will say, I mean, one of the things that I wish I had done is taken a financial literacy course of some sort. I'm not sure Georgetown offered like just a very broad financial literacy. It's like, I didn't want to take my macro and microeconomics, but my financial literacy is like still extremely low, and it's a hole. Like it is. I mean, it's a hole. I got laid off in end of 2022. We did not form an LLC until 2025. We did not get credit cards for the business until 2025. It's stupid. Like, I mean, but I just didn't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that I always tell people, especially so when we're meeting with employees and in 401k plans we work on and such, you have people that make $35,000 and are kind of blue collar, to people that make $500,000 and are patent attorneys and everything else. And there's that education piece doesn't create some sort of financial, I see people making the worst mistakes frequently on the higher end size income. So I always tell people it's, the cliche of there are no dumb questions, but truly don't let your lack of confidence on it prevent you from asking the question, because there's nothing you learned in your 4 years at Georgetown, in the classroom anyways, about how you're going to live your financial life.
No, I've gotten to the place where I kind of am okay with being like, look, I need you to accept, because I mean, just like every politics has this, I think every field has this, the world of finances and investment and retirement has its own language. And while you're totally conversant in that language, I'll sometimes be talking to people and they're like, oh, the BR612 or whatever. And I'm like, what? I'm going to stop you right there. Like, I have no idea what that is. So like, I'm going to need you talk to me like I'm an idiot. You're not going to insult me, because I've just learned over time. It's like, if I just nod my head, I'm like, I don't know what the hell is going on. So,
well, DC is a town of acronyms too. So people are always constantly floating all these different things policy wise. And I think financial advisors make a massive mistake when we talk over people trying to display our competence versus saying, hey, here's kind of what you need to do.
Yep.
Maybe you can't do it now. You mentioned, hey, job income fluctuates, kids demands, financial demands on your household pocket strings are changing. And so it is something that like you all have gone out and sought a professional, and that's excellent because they can kind of guide you through it. But I do see a lot of people, they focus on all the wrong things. They focus on what am I invested in first, not necessarily how much they're saving, which are going to be the biggest inputs to their success over their life. And especially our generation that's going to have a lot hoisted on them in terms of responsibilities.
Totally. I mean, one thing that I know is we have known Social Security and Medicare are running out of money for a very long time. And politically, there is no will, Democrats or Republicans, to address it. So I am not building in any government benefits into our planning. I mean, yeah, I think, but I really do. I emphasize it with my kids. Literally, I was just upstairs in my 17-year-old's room, and we bought him a book about like understanding, basically, I don't know what the hell the title is, but it's essentially like financial literacy for teens, because I didn't have any of that. And I think at least we still transacted mostly in cash then, day to day, whereas now it's all phone, right? So they don't even have like a touch point of like, what is $100? Like, at least I had like physical money that I could be like, it's a 10 and a 20 and 20. So it's like, I need you to understand that, like, how this all works, how you save, what, because I didn't really have that. And I think it's even harder for kids who are my kid and your kid's age, because we've basically removed like the physical spending of money. It's not even really a thing anymore. It's like, I just tap my phone on Apple Pay. It's like, well, yeah,
It's poker chips in a casino. It's the same
yep,
concept
yep,
where you used to, if you had to throw down $100 bill to play that game of blackjack versus a chip, it's different. So now the tap, I do think that the our kids, it's really challenging. And so as a kind of household keeping thing, what I do is I sit down with them and we go through, maybe it should be more frequently, but maybe it's each month. Hey, here's how much you spent. And there's
yep.
been times when, I won't say which child, because they'll probably listen to this, but a child is like, whoa, I didn't know I spent
Yep.
that much. And it's little things. It's Chipotle,
Oh, of
Starbucks,
course. It's always that.
little things that just kind of add up over time. So
Well, and
that's a constant challenge.
Exactly to that point, I said, we're not going to Grubhub McDonald's because we're paying more for the McDonald's to get delivered than the McDonald's costs. Like, and they
Right.
don't, but again, it's, at some level, it's like funny money. Like they just don't, it doesn't, I like that idea of sitting down with them and being like, here's where you have spent money, our money. Here's where you
Yeah.
have spent our money. It's like my favorite line from Shaq. One of his kids was like, what do we have to worry about? We're rich. And Shaq was like, no, we're not rich. I'm rich.
Right. Right. No,
Like
it's
that
100% it. You answered a couple questions I was going to ask. I was going to, like the Yates skill level, I was going to have you assess your own financial preparedness, and I think you've done that. And we talked
Hopefully
a little
it's
bit
okay.
we talked a little bit about the kids and kind of how we teach them. So tell me this. This gets back more to the professional piece. We're in this DC bubble. I also have a block of clients. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana originally,
Great
and I have
place.
some companies there I work with. So like
Great
they have their
place.
own
Love it there.
different environment than DC. DC is not-for-profit trade groups, law firms, construction. Indiana's, there's a little more manufacturing, some other groups that kind of come in. But do you ever get worn out professionally when it comes to the day-to-day political gamesmanship? Because what you do, I find exhausting, because I've almost had to stop reading myself, because it's just like it's
Oh, you are far from alone. One thing that Substack, the newsletter service that I do, does, and it's probably a good service that they offer, it's just not good for me, is when you unsubscribe, they give you as much space as you want to explain why.
Okay.
And people always say, like, if you're like on the creator side like me, don't look at the unsubscribes like every day or even every week. It's all it's going to do is it's like reading the comments sections. It's not going to be beneficial. It's going to get you sidetracked. But I, of course, can't resist. And I will tell you over and over again, there are some people who literally say, like, I think you're stupid. That's why I don't, there are people who just don't like me and they subscribe accidentally. But I would say, without question, certainly a majority, maybe as much as 60, 2/3 of people say exactly what you just said, which is like, I need some form of, I need a break, right?
Yeah.
Like I need a pause. It's too much. It's overwhelming for me. It's impacting my mental health. It's, I'm too focused on it. And from a business perspective, it's hard because like, I don't really know what I can do to solve for that if I need people to subscribe. But from like a human perspective, I totally get it. In terms of how I go about it, it's easier now that I work for myself, but like, I really try to keep it all in perspective. I barring like a really well-paid out-of-town speech, I will not miss any of my kids' soccer or baseball or basketball games, rec, travel, school, whatever. My wife and I try to walk. It's hard in the winter, but we try to walk 4 or 5 days a week outside. I try to. I will tell you, the college soccer recruitment process has been a healthy distraction, stressful, but a healthy distraction, because you can go, like everything else, you can go super deep on that. Like, how do you make it work, and so I just think you have to keep it in balance. I think if it becomes, I always say to people, it's hard. Like if I'm on the Acela, right, and I'm going to New York for something, and I'm sitting next to somebody and they're like, oh, what do you do for a living? And I say like, oh, I'm a political reporter. They're like, oh man, that must be like, you must be busy all the time. And I'm like, I am. At the same time, like, it's a job for me. Like, for many people, watching, consuming political content is their passion. For me, I like it. I mean, I'm passionate about it, but it is my job. And so I really try to keep some boundaries up. Like, my kid plays for a soccer club in, this will mean nothing if you don't live in the DC area, but 2 days a week they practice in Haymarket, 2 days a week they practice in Woodbridge. All you need to know if you don't live in the
It's
DC
awful.
area is it's
That's
not
awful.
close to where I live in Northern Virginia.
And
It's
traffic's
50,
miserable.
it's 50 minutes each way. But I try to drive him. He's old enough to drive now, but he's got to do his homework. He's got to eat. So I try to drive him, and I try to keep that, 7 to 10:30 p.m. block sacred. I don't schedule stuff. I don't schedule TV stuff in then. I don't schedule speeches in there. I really try to keep my schedule. I don't do work dinners in there. And it doesn't always work. You know what I mean? Like, there's the exception for every rule. But I think if I just try to say, like, this is my job, I want to do it well. But I also want to understand that I'm not going to miss. There are unmissable things in my life that have nothing to do with work, and I'm going to make sure they stay unmissable. And that's helped, I think, kind of balance it out. Like I said, it's much easier when you work for yourself than when you work for like a gigantic corporation, because yeah, I could say all I wanted, like, oh, hey, I'm not going to work that Friday to CNN. They'd be like, well, we need you to work. And I'd be like, okay, I'm
Yeah,
coming.
you're there.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
You're there.
right.
You're there. So Chris, tell me this. I know we're a little tight on time, and I have two other things I wanted to cover.
Sure.
So are there coming into this? I don't know if you've done any other kind of financial wellness podcasts. Are there any questions, financial subjects or topics that you've always wondered about, or wanted to ask a question that you could think of that you'd want to ask? If not, I can kind of proceed to wrapping
Well,
up.
no,
Or is there anything you want to plug?
I have one first, and it's not that I've always wondered, but I am fascinated by how artificial intelligence is changing every profession. I mean, look, I write for a living, and obviously writing is, was a skill. I always thought, people always used to tell kids, like, hey, no matter what you want to do, learning to be a good writer will matter. You want to be a lawyer, you want whatever. I don't know about that anymore. So I know kind of how AI is impacting my world, but how is it impacting your world?
So I've sat in on tons of webinars on this, and to me, so far it's been a net positive that there's a lot of tools that make my life much more efficient.
Yep.
Whether it's presentation tools, taking slides that I don't like the way they look and having them put in for more of like a group plan sponsor presentation. That part of
Yep.
it's great. Note takers, things like that. I think the financial advisory world, because it's so compliance heavy, you're regulated by
Yep.
half a dozen governing bodies. It's very slow to move from that end. In terms of like the more Wall Street trading mechanisms and things like that, I think there's the question, which is, hey, could kind of a self-serving, AI-driven model, maybe Amazon gets into it or Google, and everyone's now doing financial advice online.
Yeah.
The one positive I think that exists, and maybe I'm fooling myself, is that what we deal with is almost as much kind of financial psychology, the ability to talk people off cliffs constantly.
Yep.
And prevent them from their own worst self. And that's where I don't see AI fixing that. There's been plenty of online platforms that have tried to become, they were targeted. There was one towards strictly towards women, one that was towards different, races or industries that were all financial advice. And they've all kind of gotten folded back into the big financial names.
Yep.
And so I do think, at least for the next, I don't want to speak out 10 years because who knows, but the next 5 years, there's a lot of things that create a lot of efficiencies, which are great, that I don't think AI is suddenly coming for the financial advice piece because of that psychology that's involved in what we do. So I think that's a big piece.
That's sort of how I feel. It's like, I think I'll be fine, but like, if my 17-year-old wanted to go into journalism, he might be fine, but like, I feel like I'm totally incapable of giving him advice on what that would look like.
Yeah. And I think it's going to change so quickly for them. And I think too, I do see kind of fewer entry points. So like, everyone's looking for more talent, and they want to, get those people up to speed. Cause my industry, I'm 51. I don't think I'm not young anymore, but it is kind of an older grain industry as it is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of bodies that are going to be needed to replace, maybe not as many as you would have needed previously. So where you could work with 100 households in the past, you can now work with 250
That's
households.
right.
But I think there's still plenty of opportunities in the financial planning world. So I do think it would be a good industry if your kids say, well, Dad, we're not going to follow in your footsteps. But I've heard
Totally.
about this path. Like Virginia Tech actually has a program for that. And it's one of the best ones in the country. And Texas Tech does. So there's a couple of universities
my
that are
older
focusing on
boy
it.
wants to be a business guy, business major. So I'm like, more power to you. Don't be an English.
Yeah. I think maybe a little more focus on
Yes.
the industry
A
itself.
little more post-college planning than I did.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I want to thank you for being on the show. As I mentioned before, so I always wrap up with some lyrics about money from an artist or genre that shows somehow aligns with my guest. And
Okay.
I don't think I got a response back for you. And so when I Googled Connecticut musicians, I came up with Michael Bolton, Liz Phair, 50 Cent, and John Mayer. And
Sure.
I'm not going to subject my audience to their lyrics. But in preparing for this, I was on a spring break with my family out in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We went to these guys, the Wood Brothers, and it
Oh
occurred to
yeah,
me
I like the Wood Brothers.
they're good.
Yes.
And I actually saw the one brother was in Medeski, Martin and Wood, and I saw them at the Bayou back when we were in college and back when the Bayou still existed.
Of course. Legendary
So-
Georgetown Music Club.
Great place that's now a movie theater.
Yep.
So anyways, they had a song called The Money Song, and here are the lyrics. But thanks again for coming
my
on
gosh,
the podcast.
thank you for
I think it
asking.
was helpful. And we'll have to link up at some point after
I
the
would
show
love that.
here. Okay, so The Money Song, here are the lyrics. Money up, money down, happiness never found. Money gives you peace of mind, like a drug it wears off over time. Money don't make the world go round. Every day the sun goes up and down. How much do you need to relieve frustration? How much do you need to fix a bad situation? How much do you need to satisfy temptation? Can you make enough to buy salvation? So it goes on and on that in that vein, but truly I think people focus so much on money. There's a lot of anxiety around money, just like with politics. And I think perspective is very key. And the key, like you and your wife have done, is to seek help when you can, ask questions, be willing to ask dumb questions. So thanks for your insights
Oh
today.
my gosh,
It was very
thank you
helpful.
for the Wood Brothers lyrics. I dig it.
Yeah.
And I'll
Hey,
send
man,
you a
happy to
note
do it.
after and let's get together.
Sounds great. Thanks,
All right,
Chris.
my friend.
All right, take care. Bye.